Welcome to Copernicus Moonbase in Deliver Us the Moon, and this level is incredibly well designed, both in terms of the layout of the level and in terms of the modules used. This is a masterclass in how to design this kind of level, so let's talk about it. This is going to be pretty highly technical. I'm going to start with something soft though. This entire level is built around the concept of you can see something cool, but you can't go there yet. So I can see this wonderful, awesome hallway, can't go there yet. Blue Force Ghost, can't reach it yet. When you first start, there's actually another blue glowy thing over here, but I collected it already so you can't see it. But you can't get there. There's a desk in the way, so you're supposed to go around this way, right? And when you come around this way, you might notice the fact that, hey, look, there's some stuff back there that we can't get to. And look, there's some stuff back there that we can't get to. So this level is full of things you can see but not yet reach. And I think that's an excellent way to design your levels. It keeps them small and keeps them tightly knit, and it makes sure the player always feels like they have some investment in the future of the level. Now let's start moving into more technical things. The game is based mostly around square modules, by which I mean things like that storage door over there. But when you overuse square modules, it feels really square, and so the number one priority when you're assembling things out of square modules is to diminish the squareness, to hide it. And the way they've done that here is they've created this giant honkin' hall, this two-story curved hall that isn't square at all. And that's wonderful. This tilt really makes it so that you'll forgive any later squareness that you see. I think it's a brilliant way to do it. I don't know how much of it is modular. A lot of times when you get something like this, it's a set piece element that's not really intended as a modular element because it's a hero element, and that's fine. Your modular elements don't have to always be reusable. Sometimes you need a set piece, a hero object that you'll only use a couple of times, and that might be what this is. Or it could be modular. We'll talk about one or the other as we move along it later on, but I just wanted to point out that this is a wonderful way to break up the squareness of the super square modules that we normally see. Let's talk about the debris elements. These debris elements are mostly white and gray, same color as the walls and the floor and the ceiling. You're not supposed to notice them, and that's fine. And you might be wondering, well, if you're not supposed to notice them, then why are some of them frigging orange? Well, this is, I think, one of the genius things about this set of assets, and I'm not at all sure this was on purpose because it's a little bit too good to be on purpose. But if it was on purpose, oh, super congrats, that's really awesome. Here's the thing, you're supposed to be using your flashlight. If you have a flashlight, if the player has a flashlight, you really should make it so that it feels awesome to use it, so that when you play your light around, you should feel like you're discovering things. Well, if we're looking at this over here, and we play our light across it, bright orange. It's a way to make it pop, right? And you might think it's minor. Why bother? It's so minor. Well, here's some garbage bookshelves back here, storage shelves back here. How boring. Oh, look at that. Yellow stripes hidden away until I turned on my flashlight. That's wonderful. I love it. I don't know whether it was on purpose or an accident, but it's brilliant. This luggage rack is maybe one of the most beautiful luggage racks I have ever seen. Someone spent a ton of time building this luggage rack, and it looks gorgeous, and no one's supposed to notice it. It's supposed to be an invisible background object, so it's a beautiful object that nobody will ever see or ever notice, and that's kind of fun. I like that. Over here you can see a lot of them just blocking the way, and they follow the basic rules. If you have a repeated element, make sure to make the player think that it's something that's repeated in the game world and not just stamped out of the same game object. So you get elements that are slightly tilted or have things stapled to them or obscured by things or have stuff on them, anything to make it feel a little bit different, and I think that's very well done. Over here we see something really unusual, a circular area. Circular areas are extremely difficult for modules because circular modules have a specific radius that they have to be at. This desk here, if this was a modular desk, it would only work at this specific radius. If we pulled it over here, it would curve too slowly and it wouldn't actually fit against the wall. Similarly, if we pushed it out to this far wall, it would curve too quickly and it would pull away from the wall. So when you're making modular elements, making circular modular elements is really tough. Curved modular elements is really tough because they have a specific radius. So either you've got to settle on very specific radiuses, or you've got to come up with some strange solution where you don't mind curves that don't quite fit. Either way, I think that this is probably mostly hard-baked. I don't believe that these are modules intended for reuse somewhere else. It feels like they just went into Maya and baked these desks right into the model. Maybe that's not the case, I don't know. But either way, these desks couldn't be reused at some other radius. Over here you can see an asset that was moved to a different radius. This is too tight a curve for the radius it's at. So my guess is that it used to be over here. And the idea was that this facility that we're in is a security checkpoint. So you come down from above, you land on the moon, and you dump your luggage over here to get scanned, and then if you pass, you get to come through and reclaim your luggage and walk down the hallway. But they decided that that was kind of too difficult or too annoying or didn't work out or something, but they just couldn't give up on their luggage scanner, so they just slapped it in the back here to fill a corner. Unfortunately, it's really pretty bad. It just clips through the wall in a really stupid way. So that was a I think that was a mistake on their part. They really probably should have thought about that a little bit more. Either way, I'm not at all sure that this circle didn't originally extend a little bit further, but it's clear that the reason they have it at the exact place it is now is because they want you to be able to walk through the halls from this circular area. So this is just a wonderful way to connect to the halls at the perfect spot on the circle. And that's what made them make this circle exactly this size. And I think that's great. It worked out fine. The circular element is obviously going to be very limited. It's going to feel a little bit forced if you try and do too much with it, but it really helps to break up the squareness of the rest of the level. So if you put the circular element somewhere and then you manage to kind of merge it in with your square elements, it'll feel real nice. Here's the upper hallway. So these hallway elements, I'm not sure if they're modular or not. They could easily be modular, though. There's no reason they couldn't be. And basically, the trick here is that you give up on one of your walls being able to connect. So it's a square module, but one of the walls isn't square. So in this case, this wall can certainly combine with square modules. We can see it already. These walls can combine with square modules. All you need is some kind of fill for the curved element, and you're back to having square modules, and we'll see that over and over again. So that means three of the four walls of the module can mate with square elements. But this fourth wall can't. There's no square element that bends at 20 degrees backwards. So they just basically said, this is going to be a wall where we can't connect another wall to it. It's just going to be used for windows. And that's great. It allows you to break up the squareness by making one of the four sides not square. Very basic, right? Now, how you integrate this with your level is always going to be a little bit of a test for you because it can be quite difficult. You're no longer able to butt it up against any square elements. In this case, what they've done is they've hung it from the roof, which is a great idea because it's just the ceiling and you can stick stuff under the ceiling fairly easily. The way that it's integrated kind of implies that this is a set piece object and not a modular object, but I wouldn't want to bet either way. It's pretty strong. Ah, Isaac Johansson. So again, I love what they've done. And I'm sure this was, mostly level designer at this point. I can almost feel like a different feeling to it. So my guess is they had one modeler and one level designer, but again, maybe it's the same person doing both, in which case, how flexible. It's marvelous. This is a square room, and it's probably 4 square module elements, but what they've done is they've given up on one of the walls. So they've got 3 walls that integrate with the squareness of the game, and this 4th wall doesn't. And the way they've done that is they've added in pieces that jut into the room and create this wonderful nook. We're going to see this same structural piece over and over, this sloped piece over and over throughout. It's a piece of the shape language of this area, and it works really well. It's a wonderful way to give this a sense of physicality while also breaking up the squareness. Using a curve or a slant like this will really help you break up that overly square feeling. Another thing they've done is they've added in some partitions to help break up the squareness by creating, interior loops. Over here, they've gone ahead and just removed a 2x3 wall element. Presumably that's a one modular wall segment. And they've gone ahead and stuck beds in. The beds are actually longer than the wall segment, as you can maybe see. You see how they're longer than the wall segment? So what happens is the beds actually project over to here, but you can't tell that, and it works fine because that makes sense. You don't need the whole bed to always be exposed. So what they've done is they've built beds that are square, and then they can just stack them up in front of a missing wall tile and pretend that they're walls, and that's wonderful. It's another way to break the squareness. Now, in Dragon Quest XI, we saw a similar setup where the aggressively square buildings would have one of the walls, one of the square walls, replaced with an overhang, like a pocket-shaped element, and that would break up the squareness considerably. This is the same basic idea, either pushing out or pushing in, and the basic thing is you just give up on the idea that you're going to be able to extend that part of the wall any further. That part of the wall is now done. You're not going to be able to connect it up to anything else. And once you make that sacrifice, you can shape it however you want, and that's a key way to break up the squareness of these rooms. Here's another example. We've got two of those 30-degree beams stacked next to each other and turning into a desk. What a marvelous way to do it. The desk is also heavy and physical, so you can't really see the fact that the beams behind it don't quite work. It's great. It's wonderfully done. We've got a bathroom element that juts out into the room, which breaks up the corner, but again, this is a very square element, so you have to be careful to break up the squareness with something that's tilted, and in this case, they've done that right here. I probably would have thought about making these bathroom nooks look different. Maybe they could jut back or forward right at the top, something to break up the squareness, but I don't know. It worked fine for them, so who am I to dictate? These beds are a little bit unusual in that they have these bizarre side curtains, and you're not supposed to be able to walk alongside them. You're supposed to walk up from the front. I haven't seen very many beds like this in real life, but it works well for this setting. And even though these curtains make very little sense, like what are you going to be curtaining over here, they're still very convincing as objects, and I think that they really help to break up the squareness of the room, both by introducing partitions and by not being square. Modular couches are your friend when you're building modular rooms, so just keep that in mind. You can use them to fill a corner. You can fill your corner with other junk. Always fill your corners. Oh, right, roofs. So the ceiling here is really fun. You can see where the actual module ceiling is, right there, but you can see how they've just kind of half-assed it. It doesn't really fit at all, but it's fine. You're not going to be noticing that. I'm probably the only person who noticed that their wall element doesn't actually hit the roof. And what they've done is they've kind of just made do with whatever roof elements they could to block it off, whatever ceiling elements they had available. And this has resulted in a wonderful tiered drop ceiling that feels really natural. In addition, these hanging chandeliers feel great. They're just at the right height to be to make the room feel like it's not empty. If they were any higher, the room would feel a little bit too empty to be comfortable for, sleeping quarters. Another room, another setup, same basic deal. You got the bathroom nook and the 30-degree outcrop and the bed. They've gone ahead and overly filled this room. It's supposed to feel cluttered. And you can see that, if you think about it, it doesn't really make much sense. Like, why did they put a blackboard in front of the chair and stuff like that? But that's fine, because it doesn't have to make sense. It just has to feel right at the first time you see it. I will say, however, that the king of feeling right but not making sense is this desk. I think this is my favorite asset so far. It looks so good. The fact that it's mostly slanted surfaces, not flat surfaces, doesn't make it a very good desk, but not only does it have just the right feel for the space station, it's also got this marvelous cutout right here, and this cutout is brilliant. It just feels so natural and awesome. Seriously good work on the desk. I know it wasn't intended for someone's bedroom, but wherever it was intended for, I hope to see it again a couple of times. This is the end of the set piece object. You can see how it just kind of stops. I'm a little surprised to see it stop on a square note. This implies that they are planning to use it again with like doors here and stuff, because if it integrates with the square part of the game, that means you can use it and just stick on square parts. I was expecting it to be rounded with a very distinctive, this is the end of the base sort of feel, and it's not, which is interesting. But it's not bad, it's just interesting. I think that the squareness at the end really doesn't feel quite right. I would have liked to see them handle it a little bit better, but it's fine. The window shape makes up for a lot of it. And here we have a dais where someone could make a speech. We are all gathered here on the moon today to shout yay! And then everybody goes yay! And does a moon jump and hits their heads. Here you can see an example of what I was talking about. You can just make these curved hall elements flat by filling them with anything that works. And in this case, what they've done is they've used something that's square, a rectangle, and they have just created this hall element to be just wide enough so that a rectangle that covers that particular edge there will just miss cropping out over here. So that's why this is such a wide brace. It's to allow them to use square elements to finish off, to square off these rounded elements. And the fact that these rounded elements are used in so many places does imply that they are modular and are used, many other places, which would be great. I love them. Here you can see more squared off rounded elements. They went ahead and put a little slope here, a little 45-degree curve to try and make this feel a little bit less flat, but it's still pretty flat. Howdy. Ooh, decorations. Fill your rooms with junk. Fill your corners with junk. So here we have a very revealing set of halls. Can you tell why it's a super revealing set of halls? Well, maybe I'll figure it out as I talk about it, and I'll tell you when it comes up. These are square halls, and as I've said many times, you want to make sure that they don't feel square. So what they've done is they've put in these kind of sloped hoop elements to brace the halls and make them feel round, and it feels fairly natural. These are modular hoop elements. They just kind of are created as a hoop that you can use wherever you need a hoop, and that's great. I like the idea a lot. They placed them between these window meshes so that you can just make it feel like it's built specifically this way. The window meshes and the hoop meshes are different meshes. As you can see, there is just a tiny bit of a crease going on here. So you can see that these are different meshes, but they're very well done, very artfully assembled, and it works perfectly. This hall feels completely natural. Have you noticed what's funny yet? How about now? How about now? Can you tell what's funny yet? Yeah, someone accidentally did a number on this hall's alignment. It looks like someone might have accidentally rotated from center instead of rotating around pivot. But I love it when I find little details like this because it really tells you how this is all assembled. This is specifically assembled out of two pieces that are split down the middle, just like my halls in my game. And that's great, and it means that chances are that what you can do is you can stick these as far apart as you'd like and then have a roof brace that meshes between the end caps here. And that way you can have whatever shape you want and have it rounded at the edges. And that's a pretty typical approach, and it works well. Look, it works great. You can see how they repeated the same error over and over throughout the hall, so it's kind of a funny situation there. Here is the lead researcher's office with all of the Force Ghosts in it. We're not going to go through the Force Ghost mission thing because I don't want to spoil that for anybody who wants to play the game. But I do want to talk about the layout of this room because it's wonderful. This is, again, an aggressively square room. So how do you break it up to make it less square? Well, one thing you can do is put in a partition right down the middle so that you break it up and, it no longer feels square, it now feels like several rectangles. We've seen that a lot, and this is a particularly good example of that. We also can use stairs to break up the floor height, and this is surprisingly effective at helping to make a player feel like an area is alive and natural, even though it makes very little sense in terms of why there would be stairs on the moon base like this. it still feels quite natural and breaks up the space very, very well. We also see a lot of use of rounded objects, like these rounded lockers and these rounded edge braces, and these round chairs and the rounded desks and the rounded braces here. You can see a ton of rounded elements to try and break that up. Here you can see the same elements that we saw out in the hall. These are the same guys. So if I take a look here, just to show you, see this part here? And goes up, and there's a crease, and it runs around like that. If we go back out into the hall, and we take a look, oh, that's the one that isn't like that. Great. See, yeah, it's got the crease right there, and then it runs out. Same exact mesh. And you can see what I was saying. You can use that mesh, and then put a brace across the top, and then hit it with another mesh. Perfect. So now you really get a sense of how this room is assembled and how it all worked and how everything was set up. And that was just 1/4 of this level. So much thought went into just 1/4 of the level. And it's a combination of wonderful level assembly and wonderful modules to assemble your levels out of. My hat's seriously off to the team here. I actually do recommend this game, not just because I like the levels. It's actually quite compelling. I was a little bit worried with the first level because it was a little bit basic, but the levels in space have been fantastic. So unless you absolutely hate adventure games, puzzling games like this, I really do recommend it. It's a lot of fun. Next time, more level design talk.